Hey everybody, welcome back to another reasonable price prediction, the series where we try to figure out where your favorite altcoins could be headed. Now today we're looking at Vechain as requested in the comments, and for those of you that don't know, because I didn't, Vechain is a blockchain that essentially tracks shipments and other logistics. Now I'm not too sure on the finer details, like whether this information is stored on a decentralized blockchain or whether Vechain takes responsibility of the storing of this data. I'm not too sure, but I always like to have a rough idea of cryptos that I'm asked to cover. And Vechain was a crypto that I was asked to cover in the comments section. So hopefully you find this video useful if you're holding Vechain. Whatever Vechain offers anyway, people obviously wanted it back in 2020 because if we take Vechain from this low to its high, we can see it made an incredibly crazy, mind-blowing move of 174xing. So that's 17,000%, of a move, which again kind of blows my mind how cryptocurrencies are able to do this in the bull cycles. And mind you, that was from the COVID low, so if you want to be maybe a bit more lenient or realistic and take it from the halving, we can see it does a 64x from the halving date, which is still extremely impressive. So it's a good idea to set the stage with the moves that Vechain has done before and expect them to perform worse. Prepare for the worst, hope for the best. So you expect Vechain to not do as well, and if it performs better, hey, maybe you make extra money than what you might have. We can also see as well that if we sort of compare these two time frames from 2019 to 2020 to 2023 to 2024, sort of the 4-year cycle plus 4 onto each of these years, brings us to today's and last year's dates. We can see I have a lot of markers placed and they all correlate to the same thing. This orange move represents how far Vechain moved from its low to its highest point. Again, we see that here, so it already shows that we are seeing smaller returns with Vechain, whereas before it moved 230% from its low to its high, excluding the COVID scare. I took this sort of blue line as a support that Vechain often bounced back from. And you can see as well very quickly that Vechain has bounced off this blue line multiple times like it did last time, with the only break below being because of COVID. Now you could argue that that won't happen. You could also argue that it could happen. Vechain might just go up from here. Vechain might have a serious correction. It might bounce off this blue. It might break below. It might not reach the blue. There's no way of really saying. But I'm just showing you what has happened. And I'm basically taking this orange line from the support that we visited multiple times. And that's where this support has been put here. So in this cycle, I'm taking it from $1.50 cents or US cents, and taking it to the high that we recently put in of about $4, give or take, just under. And that was back, on basically around Christmas week. Vechain put in its local high for the last year and a half. This purple range also signifies an area where Vechain often comes back into to get rejected from. Again, just basically a simple range that Vechain has operated within. And we saw we had this last time as well, where it was quite a bit below our wick up, like our range high, if you get me. It was a good bit below, but oftentimes that's where Vechain got rejected from and didn't really cross into this area too much. Here we can see we've had a bit of a difference. The time that we moved up into and put in our all-time high was when we spent the most amount of time in this range. Previously, we've just very quickly gone up and gone down, like immediately exited. But on the daily, it does play out different. We do see that there's a lot more candles that spend more time in this purple. Another key difference is that here we got our range high much earlier on compared to now. There's about a 6-month discrepancy there. And we can see the general pattern that plays out is that we move from our low that sets our range support, and we rally up and put in our high, which we then retrace back to our support from, which signifies the white here, and we can see same thing plays out basically here. We go up and down, crazy. And you can see this sort of lines up a little bit with our 2019 mini bull run, which we've also spoken about quite a bit. Go watch another video, go watch the last video if you want to hear me talk about that a bit. I'm pretty sure I speak about it for a few minutes then. And then from our white, we move to our green, which also happens here. And then we have a mini dip, if you will. Like a double top, basically, is what we get without retracing to our lows. And another interesting thing is if we zoom in, we don't close on the weekly anyway, below our bull market support band. We kind of bounce off it. We ride it for a few weeks, and then move back up to make one more high, again a double top, and then COVID comes along and pulls us down. Now, with and without COVID, we've seen a lot of altcoins, back in 2016, and with the very few that have data from 2012 and stuff like this, we see that a lot of altcoins do tend to crash in and around the halving time. 2016, we had a strong pull down before, a bit of a rally back, and then another strong pull down afterwards. And of course, 2020, we had a strong pull down. I personally prescribe to the fact that we do see some sort of a correction in and around the halving, and COVID just got it all out of the way in one big move right before the halving. And because there's no COVID event this year, hopefully, fingers crossed, we may see a similar thing to 2016, where we just have maybe a sharp pull down that's not too severe, a bit of a rally back up, and then potentially another sharp pull down to a similar level. So we don't lose as much value, we just don't climb, basically. We don't drop to new lows, we just return to a low once or twice that's below the current support, which is probably this dip here, is what I would say. It also lines up more or less perfectly with these heights here. So that's what I'm personally thinking, but that doesn't mean you have to think that. Again, you should have your own thoughts and opinions on this. Maybe you believe that this was just a total COVID fluke, and that from here on out, we're just going to go up, and that this orange double top here was only caused because of the COVID pullback. So naturally, we're going to blow through this orange here and just keep rallying up as if these few weeks from here to here never happened, and we just see the price do this. There's a potential for that, and oftentimes we do see that in and around the halving, the bull market usually takes off. That's when stuff usually happens. Me personally, I'm a little more cautious, but maybe now's the time to be a bit more bullish. I don't know. It's what I think, but you guys should come up with your own thoughts. That's about everything on the US dollar chart anyway. Moving to the Bitcoin, we can see somewhat of a similar story. The first thing that I noticed, which was very interesting, is that Vechain put in a local high on its Bitcoin pair about 60 weeks before the halving bang on. It was 58 for the first cycle. And we can see here that currently our last local high is also a very similar time frame. And the same goes with the second peak that we put in. I didn't draw a time frame, but they are similar time frames. A bit more of a discrepancy here. This one's about 5 months and this one's about 4 months. So a bit more of a wider range gap, but that's fine. Again, it doesn't have to play out the same. But just interesting to know. So we can sort of confirm this as our high on our BTC pair until at least before the halving, But funnily enough, what happens after the halving is we very quickly come back up and move above this previous resistance that now also acts as a resistance. Vechain moves above this. And even though it does come back down pretty soon afterwards, and we can see it is a significant level because it comes back to test this on the weekly. It closes below and then opens the next week with a close above it. So it is actually somewhat of a significant level, a serious resistance. And we can see we do, again, like I said, blow up past it after the halving, almost immediately on the Bitcoin pair. So potentially we could see a move like this. Again, it is playing out very similarly. We have our green that comes down to this original blue support line that trends upwards. We have a strong rally up where we move above the bull market support band. Here we have a strong move up that moves us above the bull market support band. We put in our peak, which is blue. We come back and struggle a bit with the bull market support band again. And here we've come back and struggled a little bit more. However, we seem to be on the down. We've opened the week in the bull market support band, and currently we are well below. Now, as of recording, this is Sunday, so it's very unlikely that Vechain is going to rally back up and close in the bull market support band, or even less than likely for it to close above the bull market support band. So we can see that this sort of is a bit of a break, and we can see we had a very similar move. If we zoom in and take a look at this guy, we had a very similar move basically here, which is what we see in terms of percentage move. And then what do we get once we have that strong downward move? We come back and touch this blue. And if we take a look at how far out this was from the halving, it was about 9 weeks. If we take a look about where we are now, assuming it's not this week, but over maybe next week, we can see that minus 9 weeks from the halving puts us at the 19th of February, which is basically next Sunday. So you could argue that within a week we'll be down here on our Bitcoin pair and we'll be touching these lows. I think this is quite likely, personally. Whether you think there's going to be a black swan, whether you think COVID caused a big sell-off, blah, blah, blah. On the Bitcoin pair, we are following the exact same moves. And even on the US dollar pair, we're basically following the exact same moves so far. And for me, I don't have too much of a reason to believe it will go drastically different compared to last time, and especially on the Bitcoin pair. So I do see us coming back down to this blue support that's been slowly trending up. But after that, I would probably argue that we're in a good place for Vechain. That's when the rest of the market will generally start to pick up as well. Now, I know there is worries about when the Fed starts cutting rates. And if you guys aren't interested in that at all, you guys can skip forward for 30 seconds. But when the Fed historically cuts rates, markets usually do crash. Usually. And maybe crash is a hard word. They do see strong downward trends. And the crypto space is no exception to this. Now, the Fed is expected to cut during May time. I think that's probably reasonable. And if we see that, we could see a bit of a decline up to 2021. Something like we saw here. We saw from July onwards, a lot of cryptos struggled on their Bitcoin pair. And that is because while the crypto space wasn't doing terribly, a lot of stuff was slowly trending up. The Fed was cutting rates. And in fact, they started cutting rates here. But I think they had an ease and then cut them even more. Don't quote me on that. It's been a long time since I've checked the actual history. I might do a video on that because I think it's very interesting actually. But go watch Benjamin Cowan if you want a really good breakdown of Fed rates and Bitcoin dominance. Anyway, another interesting thing is, yes, we spoke about breaking back above this resistance after the halving, but in terms of when we came back to our lows after the halving, or when we put in our cycle low, we could say, which still holds up. This basically is the lowest point that we've come to on the Vechain Bitcoin pair. That came in about 32 weeks after the halving. And again, this lines up basically just before 2021. And of course, we all know 2021, the first 6 months are when altcoins went crazy. Then the latter half of the year, Bitcoin and Ethereum had a sort of second pump. Potentially, something like this could play out here. But again, no guarantees. I think that is about everything I want to cover with Vechain. I don't want to ramble too long. If you liked the video, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike. That's totally fine. Comment down below what you want covered next. Also, if you sign up to FairDesk, the exchange that's linked in the description, you'll get a deposit bonus and reduced trading fees, which also helps out the channel. We get a small kickback. So when you trade crypto on exchange, you're charged a fee. We basically get a cut of the fee. So instead of all of it going to an exchange, a small bit goes to us, which really helps out the channel. Thanks so much, guys. Take care and peace.